The Grand Hall of Avarice was unlike any place a human had ever seen. Its walls were made of living crystal that glowed with soft light, shifting in shades of blue and silver as if the hall itself was breathing. Pillars as tall as mountains stood, in lines carved with symbols of the stars, and the ceiling opened into a dome where galaxies were painted in moving light. It was a place built to make visitors feel small, to remind them that Avarians had ruled the stars for centuries. On this day, the hall was filled with guests from many worlds. Alien lords in shining armor stood with pride. Ambassadors wore robes that shimmered with threads of gold. Creatures from distant systems whispered in voices like music or thunder. Every corner of the vast chamber carried the weight of history, for this was the gathering where new alliances would be written. At the center of the hall sat the royal family of Avarice upon a dais of crystal steps. King Orlin wore a crown of light, and beside him stood his daughter, Princess Nira. She was tall, graceful, and unlike the humans in every way. Her skin shimmered faintly with silver tones, and her eyes glowed softly like twin stars. She had seen many warriors and many leaders in her life, but none had stirred her thoughts beyond duty. She believed nothing in this hall could surprise her. Then the doors opened. The guards struck the floor with their staves, and silence fell. A single human walked inside. His name was Rian. Compared to the alien lords, he seemed plain. His frame was not the tallest in the hall, nor the strongest. He wore no crown, no golden robe, only the armor of a soldier polished clean, but marked with old scars of battle. Yet as he walked, there was no hesitation in his step. His boots struck the crystal floor with a steady rhythm, and his eyes moved across the hall without fear. Many aliens whispered, some mocked in low tones, asking why a small and short-lived species had been invited to stand among great rulers. Others looked with curiosity, remembering the stories that had begun to spread across the stars. Stories of humans who fought battles long after they should have fallen. Stories of humans who survived where no other kind could. Princess Nira felt. Her chest tightened in a way she did not understand. She studied him carefully. His hair was dark, his face marked with lines of hardship, yet there was something in his expression that drew her. He did not look for applause, nor did he try to show his strength. He simply moved forward as if no wall, no doubt, and no voice could shake him. In that instant, something within her stirred, something she had never felt before. The king raised his hand, and the voices of the hall fell quiet. "Welcome," he said, his voice echoing across the chamber, "to the gathering of worlds. Today we honor courage, unity, and the hope of peace. Among us stands a representative of Earth, a world once unknown, but now spoken of across the stars. Step forward, human warrior." Rian walked up the steps, his armor catching the glow of the crystals. When he reached the center, he bowed not too deeply, but with respect. His movement was simple, yet it carried dignity. The hall remained silent, watching this lone human stand before the rulers of countless worlds. Princess Nira leaned slightly forward, unable to take her eyes off him. She told herself it was only curiosity, but deep inside, she knew it was more. The moment he had entered the hall, it felt as though the light itself had shifted toward him. The alien nobles continued to whisper among themselves, but Nira's thoughts were far away. She wondered what kind of world shaped a man like this, what oceans he had seen, what skies he had walked under, what battles had carved that calm strength into his heart. She wondered if he even knew how deeply he stood apart from everyone else in that hall. The moment stretched, and the hall felt changed, for while Rian was only one man, his presence carried the weight of humanity, a species that had risen from a single small world to stand here among the stars. And though many doubted him, and many laughed in silence, Princess Nira felt something different. She felt as if the future itself had just walked through those doors. She did not know it yet, but her heart had already chosen him. The next day, the Grand Hall of Avarice was filled once again. This time, the gathering was not for celebration, but for speeches. Each leader from the different species had come to present the strength and vision of their people. The air was heavy with pride, for no one wished to appear weak before rivals. The alien lords took turns standing before the council, a warrior from the Varkan race, whose body was covered in scales like iron, spoke first. His deep voice shook the walls as he described their fleets of warships and armies of giants that could crush cities in a single march. The guests applauded, for the Varkan were feared across the stars. Then came the Sarath, tall beings with eyes like molten gold. Their speaker raised a crystal staff and spoke of their mastery of energy, their power to command suns, and their endless knowledge stored in libraries that stretched across worlds. The audience nodded in respect, for the Sarath were known as masters of wisdom. One by one, other rulers rose and spoke. Each told of vast empires, fleets, and powers that seemed beyond imagination. Each wanted to prove that their people were the strongest, the wisest, the most worthy to guide the future of the stars. At last, silence fell, and all eyes turned toward the human warrior. Rian stood slowly. He had no golden staff, no crown, and no armor of jewels. His armor was simple, marked by wear, and his voice carried no echo of power. Yet when he began to speak, the hall grew quieter than it had ever been. "My people," he began, "do not command the largest fleets. We do not control suns. Our world is only one small planet circling an ordinary star. We are not old in the stars like many here. We are new, young, and still learning." Some nobles smirked, expecting weakness in his words. But Rian's tone did not falter. "We may be young," he continued, "but we know hardship. We have faced wars that almost ended us. We have faced storms, hunger, and struggles that lasted for centuries. And every time, when we should have fallen, we rose again. We endured. That is the strength of my people. Not in power, not in numbers, but in the will to keep standing. Even when the universe tells us to kneel, the whispers stop, even those who doubted lean closer." There was no prideful boast in his words, no arrogant claim of being the greatest. Instead, there was truth, spoken with the calmness of one who had lived it. Rian went on. "When we meet enemies stronger than us, we learn. When we face walls higher than us, we climb. When darkness surrounds us, we light even the smallest flame, and we carry it forward. That is what it means to be human. That is what we bring to this council." He bowed his head slightly, then stepped back. He did not wait for applause. He did not seek approval. His speech was finished, and that was enough for him. For a long moment, the hall was silent. No one clapped, yet no one spoke against him. It was not the silence of rejection, but the silence of thought. The words of the other rulers had been filled with power and glory, but the human's words carried something different, something harder to measure. Princess Nira felt her chest stir with emotion she could not hide. She had listened to speeches her whole life. They were always the same list of power, fleets, armies, and conquests. But this man had spoken of endurance, of courage, of spirit. His words carried warmth, as if they were alive, and she felt them reach her heart in a way no other voice had ever done. She glanced at her father, King Orlan. His face was calm, unreadable, but his eyes lingered on Rian longer than on any other speaker. Nira wondered if her father, too, felt the same weight in the human's words. When the speeches ended, the council called for rest. Guests moved back to their chambers, and groups of nobles whispered together about what they had heard. Some mocked, saying the human's words were soft. Others shook their heads, uneasy, as if they had felt something they could not explain. Princess Nira did not return to her chamber at once. She found herself moving toward one of the crystal balconies that looked over the city below. The night sky was alive with stars, and the lights of avarice spread like rivers across the land. She thought of Earth, a world she had never seen, but which now seemed so alive in her mind because of his words. Oceans, storms, skies his voice had made. Her imagined them all. She did not notice at first that someone else was standing on the balcony. It was Rian. He had come silently, as if the stars themselves had guided him there. He did not look at her, nor did he bow, but stood quietly, watching the city below. For a moment, They did not speak. Then Nira said softly, "Your words today were unlike any I have ever heard." Rian turned to her, his eyes calm. "I only spoke the truth. It is not greatness that defines us. It is the will to endure." Nira lowered her gaze, hiding the sudden warmth in her chest. She had seen warriors, leaders, and scholars from every corner of the galaxy, but none like him, none who carried such strength without needing to shout it. And in that quiet moment beneath the stars, she felt her heart move again, deeper than before. She did not yet understand it fully, but she knew one thing with certainty: the human warrior was no ordinary man. The grand hall was alive with music and light the following evening. After the long speeches of the council, a feast was held for the guests. Tables of crystal floated in the air, filled with fruits that glowed like suns, drinks that shimmered with silver, and dishes from across the stars. Voices of 100 languages mixed together, filling the great chamber with sound. Rian, the human warrior, sat at the far side of the hall. Unlike the alien lords who laughed and spoke with pride, he ate quietly. His armor was still on, though less formal tonight, and his eyes moved calmly across the room. He seemed to notice every detail: the guards at the doors, the nobles whispering together, the strange creatures flying above the tables. Nothing escaped his watch. Princess Nira sat beside her father. On the days, she was expected to smile, to greet the guests, and to act as a daughter of the crown. Yet her eyes often wandered, drawn again and again toward the human warrior. It was not just his presence on the council floor that stayed with her, but the weight of his words. She remembered how he had spoken without pride, and how his voice had painted pictures of Earth. When she looked at him now, she saw something more. Every alien in the hall carried themselves with a desire to be noticed, to show strength, to command respect. But Rian was different. He carried himself as if respect did not matter, as if his worth was not for others to decide. That quiet strength pulled at her heart. She rose from the dais and moved among the guests. Nobles bowed as she passed, and many sought her attention. But she only nodded politely and continued walking. Her steps carried her toward the human, though she told herself it was only curiosity, only the desire to learn more of this strange new species. When she reached his table, Rian stood at once and bowed his head. "Princess," he said with respect, his voice calm as always. "Please, sit," she answered softly. She took a seat across from him. For a moment, they were silent, the noise of the hall fading into the background. "I wanted to ask," Nira began carefully, "about your world. When you spoke yesterday, you mentioned oceans and storms. I have seen many planets, but your words made Earth sound alive. What is it truly like?" Rian's eyes softened. He leaned back slightly, his voice carrying a quiet warmth. "Earth is not the largest world, nor the richest, but it is full of life. Our seas stretch farther than the eye can see. Our mountains rise higher than clouds. Storms come with thunder and lightning, and yet, when they pass, the sky shines clear again. It is a world of struggle, but also of beauty." Nira listened closely, her imagination painting each scene as he spoke. She saw in her mind endless waves crashing against cliffs, forests filled with green, and skies that burned with the colors of sunset. Though she had never set foot on Earth, she felt as if she had touched its heart through his words. "You speak of it with pride," she said. Rian nodded slowly. "It is home. No matter how far we go among the stars, Earth is where we began. Every scar we carry, every lesson we learn, it starts there. We fight not because we are strong, but because we want to protect it and each other." For a moment, Princess Nira forgot the hall, the feast, and the duties pressing on her. She only saw the human before her, a man shaped not by wealth or power, but by the will to endure. Something inside her stirred again, stronger than before. She asked more questions about the skies, about the creatures of Earth, about how humans build their homes. Rian answered each with simple honesty, never boasting, never exaggerating. His voice carried no need to impress. Yet every word impressed her more than any song of glory she had ever heard. But not all eyes in the hall were kind. From across the chamber, alien nobles watched the princess speaking with the human. Their whispers carried sharp tones, mocking both the man and the attention he had drawn. Nira noticed but chose not to turn away. Instead, she leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Many here doubt your people," she said. "They call humans fragile, reckless. Do such words not anger you?" Rion's eyes met hers. "Calm and steady. Words do not break us. Doubt does not weaken us. We are used to being underestimated. Sometimes it is better that way. When the time comes, truth speaks louder than pride." The answer struck her deeply. She thought of the grand speeches of other rulers, filled with claims of greatness, and compared them to this simple truth. In her heart, she began to realize why she could not look away from him. The feast ended, and the guests began to leave the hall. Yet as Nira returned to her father's side, she carried Rion's words with her. She looked once more at the human warrior standing quietly at his table, and she felt a certainty forming within her. This man was unlike any she had ever known. He carried no crown, no jewels, no voice of thunder. Yet he held something far greater, the strength to endure, the strength to inspire. And though she could not yet admit it, her heart was already no longer her own. The celebrations of the council stretched on for days. But not all who gathered in the grand hall carried joy in their hearts. Beneath the bright light of crystal pillars, shadows grew. Whispers passed between nobles, their voices sharp with distrust. Some houses of avarice had long feared the rise of outsiders, and among them, the arrival of a human stirred unease. In the council chamber, a meeting was called to discuss the trial of strength that would soon test each species. Rion sat at the far end of the table, listening as alien generals spoke in proud tones. They described the power of their warriors, the size of their ships, and the victories they had already won. One general, a tall Varkan with scales that gleamed like steel, turned his gaze toward Rion. "And what will the humans show us? A small band of fighters with wooden tools? A race that barely knows the stars?" His words drew laughter from some of the nobles. Rion did not answer at once. His calm eyes studied the general. Then he said quietly, "We will show what we always show, that when others fall, we still stand." The laughter died, replaced with silence. The words were not shouted, yet they cut through pride like a blade. Princess Nira watched from her seat beside the king. Her heart stirred again with the same feeling she had carried since his first steps into the hall. She saw how easily others mocked him, but she also saw how his steady voice never shook. Something within her longed to rise and defend him, though duty kept her still. Later, as the council ended and the guests began to leave, Nira's father turned to her. "You watch him too closely," King Orlan said in a low voice. "The human is strong, yes, but he is not of our world. Do not let curiosity blind you." Nira bowed her head. Though her thoughts did not agree, she wanted to speak, to tell her father that this man was more than the others claimed, but her words stayed hidden. That night, as torches burned along the walls of the palace, Rion walked the quiet halls alone. He preferred silence, where he could think clearly. But as he moved through the shadows, he noticed something strange. Two figures lingered where no guards should be. Their whispers stopped as he approached. Rion slowed his steps, his hand resting lightly on the hilt of his blade. The figures moved away quickly, vanishing into the darkness of the outer quarter. Their movements were too swift, too deliberate, not the steps of simple servants. He stood for a long moment, staring after them. His instincts, sharpened by years of battle, told him danger was near. This gathering was not only a place of peace, it was a place where enemies waited in silence. The next day, the whispers of doubt grew louder. Nobles from rival houses spoke openly now. They claimed that humans were too reckless to trust, too short-lived to hold power among the stars. Some said the human warrior should not even be allowed to stand in the trial. Nira could bear no more. She rose from her seat and spoke in the council. "It is not the age of a people that proves their worth. It is not their size, nor the length of their lives. It is the spirit they carry. And I have seen it in him." Her voice carried across the hall, silencing the nobles. Even her father looked at her in surprise. Never before had she spoken so boldly in defense of one who was not of avarice. Rian, standing at the far end, glanced at her only once. His face remained calm, but his heart carried a quiet gratitude. He had fought many battles, but none had defended him with such open courage in a hall filled with doubt. When the council ended, Nira found him walking once again through the crystal gardens that surrounded the palace. She moved to his side, her voice softer than before. "You saw them, did you not? The ones who move in shadows?" Rian nodded. "There's a plan forming here. Some do not want peace. Some would see this alliance broken before it begins." Her hands tightened round the folds of her gown. "Then they may try to harm you." He looked at her calmly. "They may try, but I am used to such trials. If they strike, I will endure, as we always endure." Nira felt a strange mix of fear and admiration. She knew danger surrounded him, yet he faced it without a tremor in his voice. The weight of his words filled her heart once more, reminding her of the first moment she had seen him. As the stars rose high above the grand hall that night, the shadows of betrayal thickened. Plots moved quietly, hidden from the eyes of most. But Rian was no stranger to darkness. He had faced it many times before, and he would face it again here, even if he stood alone. Princess Nira, however, knew one thing with certainty. He would not stand alone, not as long as her heart beat within her. The days moved closer to the trial of strength. In the training grounds of the palace, warriors from many worlds gathered to sharpen their skills. The air rang with the sound of blades, heavy steps, and voices filled with pride. Each warrior wanted to prove that their people were the strongest. For the trial was not only a contest of skill, but also a test of honor before the galaxy. Rian trained apart from the others. He did not have the towering frame of the Varkan giants, nor the glowing speed of the Sroth fighters. His movements were simple, sharp, and direct. He struck, blocked, and moved again, each action shaped by years of survival rather than display. There was no wasted energy, no prideful gesture, only discipline. From behind the crystal walls of the training hall, Princess Nira watched. She was hidden among the tall pillars, her steps light as she observed him. The other warriors boasted loudly of their victories, but Rian fought in silence. He was not trying to impress anyone. Every strike of his blade spoke of battles fought not for glory, but for survival, for a long time. She stood there, her eyes following him. She thought of the way others mocked him, calling his people fragile and short-lived. Yet here he was, moving with the calm of one who had endured storms that could have broken stronger beings down at last. She stepped forward. The soft sound of her footsteps reached him, and Rian lowered his blade, turning to face her. "Princess," he said, bowing his head slightly. "You train alone," she replied gently. "I always have." He said, "It is the way of my people. We prepare for storms before they arrive. We do not wait for help that may never come." His words carried no bitterness, only quiet truth. Nira's heart stirred again, for she could feel the weight behind them. She walked closer and reached into her hand. From her gown, she brought forth a small crystal charm. It was carved into the shape of a star, glowing faintly with inner light. "This is from my people," she said softly. "It is given to those who walk into danger, a symbol of guidance. I would have you carry it." Rian looked at the charm for a long moment. He was not a man who often accepted gifts, for he knew they carried meaning. Yet when he looked into her eyes, he saw sincerity deeper than words. Slowly, he took the charm and tied it to the strap of his armor. "I will keep it," he said simply. "Not for luck, but as a reminder." "A reminder of what?" she asked. "That even in a hall filled with doubt, there is one voice that does not waver." Her breath caught at his words. She lowered her gaze, hiding the warmth that rose in her face. For a moment, the silence between them spoke more than any speech could. It was a silence filled with trust, a bond unspoken yet growing stronger with each passing day. The sound of heavy footsteps broke the moment. A group of alien warriors entered, their laughter loud as they mocked the human. One of them, a tall figure with a voice like thunder, sneered, "Training alone, human? Do you prepare to fall quickly before us all?" Rian did not answer. He only turned back to his training post, lifting his blade again. His silence angered them more than words could, yet when they moved closer, Princess Nira stepped forward. Her voice rang clear, sharper than crystal. "Enough," she said. "The trial will decide. Until then, respect the hall you stand in." The warriors bowed reluctantly and moved away. Muttering under their breath, Rian lowered his blade once more and looked at her with quiet respect. "You should not have spoken for me," he said. "I could not remain silent," she replied. "Let them mock if they wish. But they cannot see what I see." For the first time, his expression shifted. A faint smile touched his lips, small but true. "And what is it you see, Princess?" She hesitated, her heart racing, but answered softly, "I see strength where others are blind." Rian bowed his head slightly. "Then I will not let you down." The training grounds grew quiet again, but the bond between them was no longer silent. It was something stronger, unseen yet unbreakable. The crystal charm glowed faintly on his armor, a symbol not of luck, but of trust shared between two worlds. That night, as stars filled the skies above Avarice, Nira lay awake in her chamber, her thoughts restless. She had seen many warriors in her life, but none like him. His strength was not measured by height, speed, or glowing power. It was measured by the will to endure, by the calm spirit that stood unshaken in the face of doubt. And though she could not yet speak it aloud, she knew her heart had already chosen. The bond between them was no longer a whisper. It was the beginning of something far greater than either of them could have imagined. The day of the trial arrived with a sky of deep violet above Avarice, lit by twin suns that glimmered across the crystal spires of the palace. The training grounds had been transformed into a vast arena filled with towering obstacles, shifting platforms, and strange machines designed to test strength, speed, and strategy. Warriors from every world stood ready, their armor gleaming and eyes focused. Rian stepped forward calmly. Though he was smaller than most, his posture carried in unshakable confidence. The alien spectators murmured at his presence. Many had expected him to falter, to be the first to fall. They did not yet understand that his strength was not in size or raw power but in endurance and quick thinking. Princess Nira watched from the high balcony, her heart beating fast. She had seen him train, and she knew his skill. But trials like this were unpredictable. Other warriors stepped into the arena first. The Varkan giants moved with thunderous steps, crushing obstacles beneath them. The Sarath manipulated streams of energy, bending light and force to their will. Each display was impressive, designed to intimidate. Then it was Rian's turn. He walked to the starting line with steady steps. His armor was worn, but it carried the marks of battles survived, not battles won for show. He took a deep breath and focused on the course before him. The signal was given, and the trial began. Massive platforms shifted beneath the competitors, walls rose and fell, and machines moved like living beasts. The other warriors charged forward with speed and power. But Rian moved differently. He did not rush. He observed. He waited. When a wall of spinning blades came toward him, he timed his jump perfectly, landing lightly and rolling to absorb the impact. When a platform collapsed under his feet, he leapt to the next with balance and precision. Every movement was calculated, yet seemed effortless. From the balcony, Nira held her breath. She had watched him fight before, but this was different. The stakes were higher, and every moment tested not only strength but courage and intelligence. Yet Rian moved through the obstacles as if he could anticipate them, his eyes sharp, his mind faster than the machines and warriors around him. Halfway through the trial, a massive opponent approached the giant from the Varkan house. Its armor gleamed in sunlight, and its steps shook the ground. Many warriors would have panicked, but Rian did not. He watched the giant carefully, waiting for a pattern. Then, using the environment, he dodged and led the giant into a collapsing bridge. The platform gave way, and the giant fell, struggling to regain balance. The crowd gasped, impressed by his cleverness. As the trial continued, Rian faced multiple challenges that tested not only his skill but his endurance. Some obstacles were designed to confuse, others to harm, but he moved with calm precision. never yielding. His small stature, which had once been mocked, allowed him to slip through spaces giants could not enter. His agility, born of survival and training, gave him an edge no amount of brute force could match. Finally, the last obstacle approached a narrow path over a pit filled with shifting energy currents. The current crackled and sparked, threatening to knock anyone off balance. Warriors hesitated, some faltering before even stepping forward. Rian took a slow breath and stepped onto the path. Each movement was deliberate. When the currents surged, he leaned into them, using their force to push him forward rather than against him. With the final step, he reached the end and raised his hand in triumph. The arena erupted in silence, then applause. Even those who had doubted him were forced to acknowledge his skill. He had not relied on strength alone, nor on flashy displays of power. He had relied on intelligence, endurance, and spirit, the qualities that define humanity. From her balcony, Princess Nira's eyes glistened. Pride and awe filled her heart. The moment he had first entered the hall, she had felt a spark. Now, seeing him face every challenge without fear, she understood the depth of what she admired. It was not just strength. It was resilience, courage, and the calm determination to rise even when everything seemed impossible. Rian returned to the sidelines, breathing steadily. The judges announced his victory, and murmurs of respect spread among the alien nobles. He had earned their admiration, not through conquest, but through perseverance. Nira descended from the balcony as soon as the trial ended. She reached him before anyone else could. "You did it," she said softly, her voice carrying both relief and pride. Rian turned to her, calm as ever. "We all endure in our own way," he said. "Today, I endured for my people and for the future we hope to build together." Her hand brushed against his armor, feeling the warmth beneath the crystal charm Henna wore. "And you inspire more than just your people," she said quietly. "You inspire all of us." The twin sons of Avarice sat behind the crystal spires, casting long shadows across the arena. In that light, Rian and Nira stood together, not as warrior and princess, but as kindred spirits bound by courage and trust. The trial was over, but the true challenge, the journey of unity and understanding between their worlds, was only beginning. Yet for this moment, they shared a quiet victory, one that would linger far longer than applause or honor. The victory of the trial still echoed through the grand hall, but the celebrations had settled into a calm evening. Warriors and nobles mingled quietly, sharing stories of skill and courage. Yet for Princess Nira, the world felt smaller now, for her thoughts were drawn entirely to Rian, the human warrior who had captured her heart. Rian walked slowly through the quiet halls of the palace, his armor still marked from the trial. Though the challenge was over, he did not feel triumph in the usual sense. He had faced tests before, and he had always endured. But this victory carried a new weight, the respect of a world far greater than his own, and the admiration of a princess unlike any person he had ever known. Nira moved to meet him in the grand hall. The crystal lights reflected off her gown, shimmering softly as she approached. Her steps were careful, yet filled with determination. She paused before him, her heart racing. For the first time, she would speak not as a princess, not as a daughter of Avarice, but as someone guided by her own choice. "Rian," she said, her voice steady but warm, "you have faced every challenge without fear. You have earned the respect of this hall and of many worlds. But more than that, you have earned my heart." Rian turned to her, surprise flashing across his calm face. He studied her eyes, glowing faintly like stars, and saw no hesitation. Only truth and courage stared back at him. "Princess Nira," he said softly, "I never expected this." "You need not expect," she replied. "It is not about expectation. It is about what is true. From the moment you entered this hall, I felt something I have never felt before. Your courage, your strength, and your spirit have changed my world." For a moment, silence held them, quiet and profound. The hall seemed to shrink around them, and the light of the crystals reflected the beating of their hearts more than the glow of the walls. Rian knelt slightly, a gesture of humility and respect. "I am honored," he said. "I have fought for My people, for survival and for the future. But I did not expect to touch someone's heart in this way. Nira smiled, a soft and genuine light that reached him more than any words. She stepped closer, her hand resting lightly on the crystal charm that had once been hers and now hung from his armor. You carry not just the will of humanity, she said, you carry hope. And I wish to share that hope with you, Rion's calm demeanor softened and a small smile formed. Then we will share it, he said. Not as human and princess, not as warrior and noble, but as two souls reaching toward the same future. The grand hall, once filled with whispers and suspicion, seemed to breathe a quiet approval. Even the alien nobles who had doubted the human looked on, their expressions less mocking and more contemplative. Some had begun to understand that true strength was not measured by size, armor, or flashing power. It was measured by spirit, by resilience, and by courage. Nira extended her hand, and Rion took it without hesitation. The touch was gentle, yet full of unspoken promises. Together, they stood at the center of the hall, a symbol of unity and trust, not only between themselves, but also between their worlds. The path ahead will not be easy, Rion said, his eyes steady. There will be challenges, doubt, and forces that seek to divide us. But we have already faced the greatest trial, learning to trust each other. And we will face what comes, Nira said, together. The twin suns outside dipped below the horizon, casting long beams of gold and violet across the crystal floors. The light reflected in their eyes, mingling with hope and determination. At that moment, neither felt fear nor doubt. They had discovered a bond stronger than titles or power, a connection born not from ceremony but from courage and truth. As the stars began to fill the skies above Avarice, Rion and Nira walked side by side toward the balcony. The city below sparkled like scattered gems, a reflection of the possibilities that awaited them. Each step was a promise, each glance a reassurance that they had chosen the right path. For Princess Nira, it was the moment her heart had long awaited. And for Rion, it was the realization that humanity's greatest strength was not only in endurance, but in the ability to inspire hope, trust, and love in others. In the grand hall, beneath the glowing crystals and the watchful stars, two worlds had begun to unite, one through courage, one through spirit, and both through the silent but powerful bond of the human warrior and the alien princess, who had lost her heart the instant he had stepped inside. And in that quiet triumph, the future of their world seemed brighter than any of the stars above.